It's time for audience questions. Send them in. We love answering them. 3 at the end of every Friday show. First one today is from Brianna. Brianna says, hey, you've talked about staying at other people's houses versus hotels, but what about when people stay at your house? What makes someone an ideal house guest and what makes them a terrible house guest? Okay, I mean, there's a lot of material here, Lewis. And also, I think it's very different in terms of staying over versus just coming over for dinner. I think a general thing that makes someone a good house guest or can make them a bad house guest is if they just really go with or against what are sort of the established ways of doing things. So, like a small example would be if you have clearly a shoes off house, and you can tell this because all the shoes are outside the front door or right inside the front door, and your house guest insists on wearing shoes around, that type of thing, right? Just not going with the flow of how the host's house is run. I think that can be really frustrating for the host. You're on a mic, right?
Yeah. There's my microphone. Disrupting the flow of things, right? That's a big one. Now, neither one of us really has many house guests, though.
No, I'm not that into having house guests. I'm not that into staying at other people's houses for exactly these reasons. You know, I have my routine, and I'd rather just someone have the freedom to do whatever it is that they want to do. And I'll start getting irritated if somebody is not doing that. And also, I feel like I'm imposing on most people if I were to stay at their house. With certain people, it would be okay if the space is appropriate, if it's a relatively sizable house or whatever. But when I go and stay somewhere and a friend who has a 1 bedroom and says, you know, you and your girlfriend can stay in the living room, we have a couch, that does not appeal to me. It's just not going to be a comfortable situation for them or for me. That's my thing.
For me, it's if you have a house guest and it's nighttime, you've retired, and they are hanging out watching TV. TV volume is a big one.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and if you're staying at my place, there's a good chance I'll have no problem telling you to turn the TV down.
Right.
But I still find myself doing that quite often.
Do you find, one of the things I find that makes people not ideal house guests is when you didn't even really offer them the opportunity to be house guests. They sort of have insinuated and said, I'd love to actually stay with you. And I think the average person, if they're open to having you stay at their place, when you mention you're going to be in a city and you haven't yet made accommodation arrangements, if they're remotely okay with you staying there, they'll mention it. And by the way, often not even mean it, right? Even when someone offers you space to stay, they might still not want you there, but they're doing it out of a sense of necessity. If the person doesn't offer, they definitely don't want you to stay. So I think that's a sign. I would never say, oh, so, I'm coming to San Francisco, and here are my dates. I haven't made any accommodation arrangements yet. Oh, really? Yeah. All right, well, let me know where you end up staying so we can get together, or I can make recommendations about neighborhoods. That is not a sign that you should say, well, do you have room at your place? That person does not want you there. The 1 in a million might just be like a distracted person who doesn't think of it. But for the most part, that's not someone who wants you staying over. I recommend not insinuating yourself into their place.
Agreed. That's the best piece of advice maybe you've ever given on this program.
And as far as cleanliness and stuff like that, obviously, if someone comes into your place and makes a mess, that's not good for anybody.
Yeah. I mean, if they defecate on the floor in your living room, just don't never have them over again.
Yeah, I mean that's led Dennis Rodman to get kicked out of a country, right?
Yeah, that was in a hotel in Pyongyang, I believe, and wow, yeah.
Send in some of your best and worst house guest stories, either as the house guest or the host. Maybe we'll do a follow up if there's some funny ones.